The Committee on the Budget and Government Operations is called to order. Pursuant to applicable law and my determination that attendance by remote means is necessary because an in-person meeting is not practical or prudent due to the declared public health disaster caused by COVID-19. This meeting is conducted by video conference. We will now have a roll call to establish quorum. Please note that your yes or present response will be deemed a yes vote when the quorum roll call is used as a reference vote for later items. Please unmute your microphones. Vice Chair Silverstein. Alderman King. Alderman Hairston.
Present.
Alderman Sawyer. Alderman Mitchell. Alderman Harris. Alderman Sadlowski Garza.
Present.
Alderman Cardenas. Alderman Quinn.
Here.
Alderman Moore. Alderman Curtis. Alderman O'Shea.
Here.
Alderman Brookins. Alderman Rodriguez.
Present.
Alderman Tabarez.
Present.
Alderman Scott.
Present.
Alderman Burnett. Alderman Irvin. Alderman Taliaferro. Alderman Raboris.
Present, Madam Chair.
Alderman Wagisback.
Present.
Alderman Austin.
Present.
Alderman Ramirez Rosa.
Present.
Alderman Villegas. Alderman Mitz. Alderman Sposato.
Nick Sposato's here.
Alderman Napolitano. Alderman Riley. Alderman Smith.
Present.
Alderman Tunney.
Present.
Alderman Kappelman.
Present.
And Alderman Osterman.
Present.
Chairman-
Alderman Taliaferro's present.
Alderman Taliaferro, have
Thank
you?
you.
Alderman
Thank you.
Silverstein, present.
Vice Chair Silverstein, present.
Alderman Irvin is present.
Alderman Irvin,
Yes.
got you.
Non-member Lopez here, Chairman.
Got you.
Thank
Alderman Lopez and Alderman Beal are non-members who are present.
Alderman Mitchell, present.
Alderman Mitchell, we have you. Alderman Riley, did I hear you?
Yes, that was me.
Oh, that was you. I thought it was your voice.
Alderman Harris is present.
Alderman Harris, good morning.
Alderman Cardona is non-member.
Got you, Alderman Cardona.
Alderman Beal.
I already said your name, Alderman Beal. We have 23 members present. We have a quorum. At this time, we will begin public comment. We have one speaker this morning, and that's George Blakemore. Mr. Blakemore?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Mr. Blakemore.
Yes, I see that you have three items on your agenda today. I'm encouraging you and the committee to now cease from having these virtual call and meet at City Council down there at the chamber, and where the public will be able to speak. On your items, you have three items. And the first item is dealing with culture events. These culture events that are given in the city are parks. Anybody using the city parks must be able to get some type of voucher that they will be able to attend these cultural events because they are being taxed without being represented. by being present, being able to go to the park. So you must have a donation probably, but it's not mandatory. If they're citizens, they can come to these events. The next that you have something dealing with rent and it's dealing with subsidy. I don't know how the city was able, I don't know about that program, if it's in the budget. I don't see the amount of money, anything, and I don't have a complete agenda. Also, I see another item, and it deals with your court. And by this resolution, for having a Black person on the Supreme Court, female or male, doesn't guarantee that Black people will be represented. The face is not enough. We must look at her background and how she have advocated and been successful in advocating for justice for Black people. So that's why it's very important. And that resolution, last city council, I was presented a resolution I never received. The people that I came down with, you all were so disrespectful. You didn't tell me to come down to the chamber, and Ms. Lightfoot present that resolution to me, and the camera people and everything would take the picture. You did these things for Jesse White. You did these things for other Tim Black. You did these things for Jesse Jackson. I am somebody by the mere fact that I received that resolution. It was supposed to be given to me in a proper manner. However, I do appreciate Alderman Sawyer bringing up that item.
Thank you, Mr. Blake.
Can
More
you hear me?
comments this morning. I also want to recognize that we've been joined by Alderman Napolitano, Alderman Mitz, and Alderman Burnett.
Alderman Moore is present, Chairman.
We got you, Alderman Moore. Thank you. We have 4 items on the agenda today. Item number 1 on the agenda is an ordinance concerning an amendment to the annual appropriation ordinance year 2022. I'm sorry, before we get started, we'll begin with the approval of the February 2022 monthly Rule 45 report. This report was sent electronically to everyone. If there are no questions, can I get a motion to recommend?
So moved, Alderman Austin, if no objections.
Alderman Austin moves that we accept and approve the report of February 2022 by the affirmative vote of all members present for the roll call to determine quorum. Hearing no objection, so ordered. We do have 4 items on the agenda this morning. Item number 1 is an ordinance concerning an amendment to the annual appropriation ordinance year 2022 within Fund 925 for the Department of Cultural Affairs and Special Events. Is there a motion to accept the substitute ordinance by the affirmative vote of all the members present for the roll call to determine quorum?
So moved, Alderman Scott.
Alderman Scott so moves. Hearing no objection, so ordered. The substitute ordinance is now before the committee and will be explained by Latoya Vaughn, sorry, Latoya, the Deputy Budget Director from the Office of Budget and Management. Ms. Vaughn.
Good morning, Honorable Chairwoman Dowell, members of the committee and non-members of the committee. I'm Latoya Vaughn, the Deputy Budget Director here with the Office of Budget and Management, and I have 2 items to present for the amendment today, totaling $580,000. $80,000 is new carryover funding, and $500,000 is new COVID funding. The first grant is for the Department of Cultural Affairs and Special Events, who is requesting to accept new COVID ARP funding in the amount of $500,000 from the National Endowment of the Arts for the Arts Promotion Program. These funds will be used to provide general operating funds to art service organizations that apply for DCASES for the Department of Cultural Events and Special the Department of Cultural Affairs and Special Events City Arts Grant Program for nonprofit arts and culture organizations in 2022. These funds will provide funding for essential staffing and personnel costs at the organizations whose missions are aligned with strengthening the capacity of the sector and are positioned to serve as leaders of the art community that faces challenges rebuilding ahead. There will be 13 to 18 contracts ranging from 25,000 to 40,000. And we provided attachments that identifies the demographics for the different evaluation committee members, as well as notifications for the SSA, social media, community outreach and organizations that were targeted within the South and West Sides. The Department of Transportation is requesting new carryover grant funds in the amount of $80,000 from the U.S. Department of Transportation through the Illinois Department of Transportation for the National Priority Safety Program. These grant funds provides funding for the Chicago Safe, which are Streets are for Everybody Ambassador Program, which provides education and engagement programming. This program educates 2nd and 5th grade students to ensure Chicago schools compliance with House Bill 4799, which requires every public school to provide infrastructure on safe walking and bicycling. The program also provides data analysis and support to the Chicago Police Department and provides safe seniors and safe routes to school presentations in Vision Zero high crash areas. Safe Ambassadors also participates in community engagement activities and events and supports Chicago Police Department safety missions. In 2021, the Safe Ambassadors attended 125 events, engaged with over 11,000 people, and educated over 2,250 school children throughout the city. We also provided an attachment of all of the events that occurred in 2021. And that concludes the ordinance amendments totaling $580,000.
Are there any questions from members of the committee or any of the non-members? I have one comment to the Department of Cultural Affairs. As I was looking over the panelist demographics for the large grants, I assume that's for the large grant program. There are no African Americans represented on that panel. And I'd like to know if there's any activity going on to identify an African American person to be on that committee.
Hi, Alderman Dowell. Yes, I have Lena Chevalier, who runs the grant program, and she can talk a little bit more about the demographics for the large organizations.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for that question. Yes, and absolutely, we are recruiting panel members right now and are planning to identify African American member for the panel for the large organizations. That is a panel that usually includes 3 or 4 people. So we may be expanding that from 3 people to 4 people. The large organizations is our smallest pool of applicants through this program, usually about 35 applicants. Our pool for the smaller organizations, which has a larger panel, has about 350 applicants. So that one has a larger panel and more representation.
Okay, well, I'm glad to hear that someone from the African American community will be added to this, because that perspective needs to be included in this as we look at the larger organizations. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you so much for that question.
Alderman Hairston.
I wanted to ask, is there a timeline? What we've been seeing is that we get the promise, and then here we are a year later without it. So is there a timeline with this?
In regards to the grants going out, or in regards to the panel recruitment?
In regards to the panel recruitment.
Yes, yeah, we are actually going to be finalizing our panel recruitment for this year by April 11th. So yes, there is a timeline, and we will have that concluded by then.
So why are we passing this today when we don't have the complete panel?
Well, the application
if it's going to be done within the next 2 weeks anyway.
So the application is already open for the program. So once the applications come in, there's a few steps to the review process. So the Staff first reviews the applications to confirm eligibility and then sends the eligible applications along to the grant review panel. So the panel training begins a few weeks after that application deadline, which is March 22nd. So the panel recruitment is ongoing right now.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
Alderman Hairston, this is actually for the acceptance of the grant money into the city.
okay. Well, I just want to make sure, because after the money comes into the city, they can very well not put an African-American representative on there or do the slow walk, which we've seen before. So that's my concern, because after they got the money, there's nothing we can do.
You bring up a good point, Alderman Hairston, but we will definitely, once this list is finalized, we will 100% send it to you and the committee as well to ensure there's an African-American panelist.
Thank you.
Of course.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I also want to acknowledge that we've been joined by Alderman King and Alderman Sawyer. Is there a motion to recommend approval of item number 1 by the affirmative vote of all members present for the roll call to determine quorum?
Alderman Burnett moved to pass.
Alderman Burnett so moves. Hearing no objection, so ordered. To pass recommendation of the substitute ordinance will be reported out at the next city council meeting on March 23rd. Item number 2 on the agenda is an ordinance concerning an amendment of the Emergency Rental Assistance Program called ERAP software contract with Uncork Inc. And this ordinance will be explained by Daniel Hertz, the Director of Policy for the Department of Housing. Mr. Hertz.
Thank you very much, and good morning, Aldermen, members of the committee. I'm sharing my screen. I have a very short presentation. Apologies for the delay here. There we go. Good morning. My name is Daniel Hertz, Director of Policy for the Department of Housing. I'm here to present on a request for authorization to continue a contract with Uncork for the continued operation of the Emergency Rental Assistance Program, or ERAP. I'll give some just really quick background before getting into the substance of the ordinance before you. So as many of you know, the Emergency Rental Assistance Program is a federally approved and funded program that provides money for the department to provide to tenants and landlords who have been affected by COVID-19 and the economic fallout and who have been unable to make rent payments as a result. It's been a crucial program, not just in Chicago, but around the country for making both tenants and landlords whole, stabilizing housing, and reducing the number of evictions in the city. ERAP came in 2 major waves. So the first one, which we call ERAP 1, was appropriated last year, at the beginning of last year, and delivered about $80 million to the Department of Housing for emergency rental assistance. We obligated 100% of those funds by November. We're able to assist over 12,000 households with an average payment of just under $8,000 for rent and about $1,000 for utilities. We believe partly as a result of this, eviction filings continue to be, even after the end of the eviction moratorium in October of last year, eviction filings continue to be below pre-pandemic levels, although they are ticking up. After ERAP 1, we received a second batch of funds from the same source, same program, which is called ERAP 2. And that was actually a significantly larger amount of funds. So we have $102 million for ERAP 2, which we have been using to fund applications since November. We have now obligated approximately 2/3 of those funds. And we remain in the top tier of large jurisdictions, including large cities and states across the country, in terms of how quickly we are able to get these funds out. Many of you may have seen articles from around the country about the fact that this program has struggled in many places to actually get the funds into people's hands. We're really proud and happy to say that that has not been the case in Chicago, and our colleagues at the Illinois Housing Department, Illinois Housing Development Authority, which also received a significant amount of funds and the ability to serve Chicago, they have similarly been able to get their funds out very quickly. The reason that we are here today is related to the ongoing operation of the program. So because ERAP was an emergency program, the beginning of 2021, Council authorized two different paths for securing sort of administrative capacity to actually implement the program. Council authorized DOH to do a fast-track competitive RFP for staffing. After a brief RFP period, an evaluation committee unanimously selected the Resurrection Project as the case management operator of the program. And then 1 month later in March, Council authorized DOH to contract with Uncork, a software provider, to provide an online application platform as well as a case management platform for our case management staff to actually process and approve applications. And that is crucial because of the volume and complexity of these applications. In the first round, we received over 26,000 applications in just 2 weeks. In the second round of applications this past December, we received over 14,000 applications. And in addition to just the volume, the way that the ERAP applications work requires for us to attempt to match tenant and landlord applications together. So both tenants and their landlords can apply separately, and we need a system that can track those and match them and merge those applications. It was crucial for us to get that software provider on board as quickly as possible because of, in part, the lead time needed to customize the software for the Chicago version of this program. And because of that sort of fast track authorization, we were able to launch ERAP in May of last year, start getting money out very quickly, and hit some of the interim spending requirements that the Treasury Department, the Federal Treasury Department, put on the department. In fact, other jurisdictions have had hundreds of millions of dollars swept from them because they were not able to spend funds quickly enough. We are in the position of not only not having funds swept from us, but we have actually, in the latest round of reallocation, actually received some measure of additional funds from those other jurisdictions that have not spent their money on ERAP. The reason that we are coming back today for an additional piece of authorization related to the Uncork contract is that the 2021 authorization from Council permitted us to contract with Uncork for up to 2 years for a total contract value of $600,000. But this amount was not changed when the federal government approved ERAP 2 and more than doubled the volume of funds that we have to process. So we are still essentially operating with just an ERAP 1 contract amount when we now are also well into processing ERAP 2 and still have a significant amount of funds to process in ERAP 2. So the ordinance before you would simply add $600,000 to the cap of the value of our contract, of the department's contract with Uncork, to accommodate the use under ERAP 2, but would not importantly extend the timeline of the contract. So it would still be limited to 2 years, and we would still return to return to a procurement process and to council for authorization to extend if we receive enough funds to continue this program beyond the end of the 2-year period. And the other point we wanted to raise is that our administrative spending in ERAP remains, even with this additional authorization, would remain far below the administrative expenses cap established by federal law, which is 10% for ERAP 1 and 15% for ERAP 2. We're significantly below that, particularly for ERAP 2. And then finally, I wanted to provide a map of some of the, just to give you a sense of a distribution. These exact numbers are slightly out of date, but the distribution holds of where we are receiving applications on the right, or excuse me, on the left-hand side, and where we are seeing approvals, which you can see is very similar to where we're getting applications. We've gotten ERAP applications and approved in every, these are by zip code, but in every zip code, in every ward, in every community area. But we are certainly seeing the greatest need and the greatest support that ERAP is able to give in areas of the south and west sides where we know that housing instability has been the greatest for a long time, even before COVID, and where we know that as well COVID has had the harshest impacts. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions from the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. Very good explanation. We'll start with Alderman Osterman, followed by Alderman Irvin.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just a brief comment. 2 years ago, none of this program was not there, and I think that the work that housing, especially in tandem with the budget committee, the housing committee, and the members of the city council, have really done an outstanding job of caring for those Chicagoans deeply impacted by the financial impact of COVID. So the housing department under Commissioner Navarra, with Daniel's leadership and their whole team, really made this program work in a way that I think all of us can be proud of. This extension of the contract, I think, will help them continue to do that work to make sure that we're utilizing the money to the best of our ability to help renters and landlords stay in their units. So strongly support this and would ask my colleagues to do the same. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Alderman Osterman. Alderman Irvin.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. One question, just quickly, the difference between the applications and the actual approvals. What's driving? My understanding was that if one applies, they should be granted the assistance. Why is there a disparity between the number of applications versus the number of approvals?
Thank you, Alderman. Yeah, there are two basic reasons. One of them, to be totally frank, is just it takes some time for our staff to get to them. So we have 60 full-time staff working to make approvals, and at this point, and for several months now, going back to late 2021, we have been approving about $1 million a day worth of applications. But when we have, as I said, 26,000 applications the first round, 14,000 in the second, that can still take some time just to get to everybody. The second reason is that there are some applications that, for whatever reason, don't meet the standard, either because they've submitted faulty documentation of something that we need, proof of address, proof of income, or because of some other issue. So there are a limited number of applications that we're not able to fund simply because we don't have all of the documentation required by the federal government.
Is this more of a first in, first out system, or do you go to a lottery process should we get to a point where we're running out of funds? How are you making that decision on who actually is serviced?
Yeah, so since ERAP 1 last year, we have operated by prioritizing the lowest income applicants first. So essentially, our case managers are instructed to pick up the lowest income applicants and work sort of up from there as a way of prioritizing the most vulnerable. That is partly guidance from federal government to prioritize people below 50% of area median income, and partly our judgment about where we want to just sort of prioritize the resources that we have. We know that over 60% of our grantees have been people making less than 30% of area median income or extremely low income residents, and I believe more than 90% have been under 50% of area median income, but that is how we've been prioritizing the order in which we pick the application.
And then my final question as it relates to the contract, you're asking for an additional 600,000 in spending authority. What is the makeup of the organization or the subcontractors to the team that's been awarded the contract?
To Uncork. I know that we do have that information. I don't have it on me, but I can provide it to you through the chair. I can say this is an organization based in New York that has provided software for public entities in a number of different places, including New York City and DC and a few other jurisdictions. When we were looking for a software solution for ERAP, one of the challenges we had was just the limited time and limited number of organizations that had something ready more or less off the shelf that we could very quickly customize. You know, when on the other side with the staffing contract, which is significantly larger, we were able to do a full RFP and select a local organization, you know, led by people of color, which I think, you know, we thought was really important for the operation of the program, right? Given the people being served here, we want the people closest to the applicants and actually serving the applicants to be, you know, people working on the ground in Chicago who know the city, know the communities, and are best equipped to do that.
So you don't know the background of the people that are doing this particular contract, but what you're saying is that the organization that's administering the staffing component is more diverse. So is it fair to say that the group that's doing the IT work on this is not diverse at all?
I don't know about not diverse at all. It's certainly fair to say that they are less diverse than the staffing component, yes. And I can get it. I mean, it is it is fair to say that most of the executives at Uncork are white. I can get you the exact demographics, but yes, that is true.
Okay, so they're not an MBE.
Alderman Irvin, you can look on their website. I'm looking on their website now. You can see their leadership team, which includes what I would say would be an Asian woman, an African-American man, another woman, someone of Indian background. Of the, what looks like 9 or 10 people, 12 people on their leadership team.
Okay, and then there's no subcontract in this particular case?
No, there is no IT subcontract.
All right, and this is was this done on an emergency basis to start with?
That's correct.
Okay, all right, that's explains it then. All right, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Alderman Irvin. Alderman Lopez.
Thank you, Chairman, and good morning, members of the committee. Daniel, I just have a question. And if anyone else from Budget Office or Procurement wants to answer. Generally speaking, when we issue RFPs, we have a set price for a set service, correct?
I suppose that's generally true, but I'm happy to defer to other folks from procurement who can give a more robust answer than that.
So the current emergency contract, while we're waiting for someone from one of those departments to answer, was for how was that broken down? Was it broken down by the 80 million that they were responsible for distributing? Was it by outreach? How is their payment determined?
Yeah, partly time, partly volume. Partly, so I would say partly it's a subscription, partly it's professional services that involve sort of updating the and customizing the platform, and then there are some aspects of the ordinance or of the contract that are based on volume.
So I would imagine then setup and platform are already paid for because you don't have to reinvent the wheel, correct?
There actually was a significant amount of additional customization needed to transition us to ERAP 2. There were, although the program is substantially similar, there are some changes in documentation requirements, as well as the need for essentially tracking two different streams of funding, because when we report to the federal government, we do have to distinguish between what we're doing with ERAP 1 and what we're doing with ERAP 2.
So they had to put column A and column B in the platform. I get it. So my question then would be, if it is a volume-based issue, wouldn't the contract have been able just to be extended naturally and funded accordingly if the volume increased without having to come back for a continuation of emergency funding? Wouldn't that have just been a natural inclusion of the original RFP?
No, what council allowed us, gave DOH authorization to do last year was establish a up to 2-year contract with a set dollar amount cap. So that did not change based on volume of services or the additional work needed to transition the platform to ERAP 2. So we did not have the ability to add those services or that funding to the contract without additional council approval.
Well, I guess the issue that I'm trying to understand, Chairman, is, you know, if the platforms are basically the same, either A, we kind of forced our vendor to do 2 different jobs under one contract, or they were doing 2 jobs correctly, and now we're trying to find a way to backfill them for the unexpected volume. So whomever could answer that, I would appreciate that.
Not really clear on your question, but Director Parks, are you on this call?
Or someone from procurement, Chairman.
We don't have anyone from procurement because we didn't have a procurement issue on the agenda today. I'm sorry, we're going to have Susie, our Director Park. Could you please promote her as a panelist?
I've been trying, Chairwoman. She has to accept the promotion. I even allowed her to talk from attendees. It looks like she may be away from her desk.
Chairman, in lieu of Director Parks and for the expediency of the meeting, can you just provide through the chair what this emergency RFP looked like so we could see, so that I could understand it better as well?
Mr. Hurst will contact you after this meeting. Is there a motion to recommend approval of item number 2 on the agenda by the...
So move, Madam Chairman. Alderman Mitts.
Chairwoman, you are muted.
You're mute.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So moved. Alderman Mitts moves that the item number 2 is accepted or recommended for approval by the affirmative vote of all members present for the roll call to determine quorum. Hearing no objection, so ordered. The due pass recommendation of the ordinance will be reported out at the next City Council meeting on March 23rd. Item number 3 on the agenda is a resolution introduced by Alderman Pat Dowell, Mayor Lori Lightfoot, and others supporting the Biden administration's nomination of a Black woman to serve on the U.S. Supreme Court. First, I want to thank all the members of the City Council who signed on to this resolution, which was submitted to Council at our meeting on February 23rd. We do know that IGA sent out a letter or a copy of the resolution to Senator Dick Durbin, the Judiciary Senate Chair that will be hearing this nomination. And so today I'm asking for approval of the resolution by the full Budget Committee and thereafter the City Council. President Biden nominated Federal Appeals Court Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson to serve as a U.S. Supreme Court Justice on February 25th. If confirmed, Jackson would be the first Black woman to serve on the nation's highest court. She is currently a judge on the United States Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit, and she previously served 8 years as a federal district court judge in Washington, D.C. She would also be the first public defender to become a Supreme Court justice. Her confirmation hearings are scheduled to begin on March 21st. And so the work that we did here in the city of Chicago to support a nomination of an African-American woman was important. And as March is Women's History Month, I think that we should all be proud of our effort to celebrate trailblazers and champions and advocates and innovators in our community. So is there a motion to recommend approval of item number 3 on the agenda by the affirmative vote of all members present for the roll call to determine?
Alderman Hairston, so moves.
Alderman Hairston, so moves. Hearing no objection, so ordered. The due pass recommendation of this resolution will be reported out at the next City Council meeting on Wednesday, March 23rd. Again, I want to thank all of the members of the City Council who supported this important resolution. Finally, item number 4 on the agenda is an ordinance introduced by Alderman Beal and others concerning an amendment of the Municipal Code, Chapter 2-60, by adding a new Section 260-090 to establish the position of Legislative Counsel. I have looked at this, and we will be holding this in committee today for a number of reasons. One point, I know that people have not had an opportunity to really delve into the substitute, which we received late yesterday afternoon after working hours, actually at 6:07 p.m. And there are a lot of substantive issues in the substitute, really different from the original that was submitted by Alderman Beal. In addition, the changing of rules within the substitute ordinance should actually be considered by the Rules Committee. There are also issues with funding of the 2 positions with the Law Department and the Budget Office have not reviewed any of this, or we have not spoken to law about or budget about what's included in the ordinance. So I'm going to ask that we hold this item until there's time.
Madam Chairman.
I'm not finished, Alderman Beal. Hold this item until there's time to review and work out the details of this substitute ordinance given by Alderman Beal. Before we go to you, Alderman Beal, Alderman Irvin.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I thought that there were 2 ordinances on this subject and that there were briefings. I thought there were some briefings scheduled next week for this. Is that correct?
Yes, there is another ordinance submitted by Alderman Riley on this. I don't know if he wants to speak to the briefings that I don't have the details on the briefing. So I see his hands up. So Alderman Riley, will you speak to?
Well, I thought asked to be recognized first, Madam Chairman.
You'll be
I'm a member of the
recognized,
committee.
Alderman Beal, when I call on you. You're not a member of the committee. Alderman Riley.
Thank you, Chairman, and I'll reserve comments for the substitute that's being brought forward by Alderman Beal later. But to the question of briefings, just as a point of information, we've reached out to all members of the council to host briefings on Friday. There are 4 or 5 different sessions throughout the day to try and be flexible around everyone's competing busy schedules. But the purpose there was to bring folks in and walk them through the draft of the ordinance that I submitted to the Rules Committee. And the purpose was not just to explain what it would do, but also to get some feedback and suggestions on how to make it better. And since we circulated the ordinance since last council, a number of our colleagues have had some really great ideas that we'd want to address with a substitute. But obviously, the idea here is to get this right the first time. And that's why we're going to take this step of having these briefings. And Chairman Harris has requested that. I think it was an excellent request. And the hope is that the outcome from the briefings is we have an even better ordinance. But I think that Alderman Beal and I have the same goal here, which is to provide the City Council with much greater resource to make us a better informed body when we're interacting with the executive branch, whoever that is. You know, Chairman Dowell, you and I will be in our respective positions for another year. But this is really about future city councils. So I look forward to having those discussions on Friday. For those who haven't signed up, please reach out to my office to get scheduled into a slot. But I'm hoping that, you know, the outcome of these competing proposals is really an excellent ordinance that serves everybody here. So that's the purpose of the briefings. Please, if you haven't signed up already, please do. They're this Friday. We have morning and afternoon sessions. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Alderman Riley. Alderman Irvin, does that answer your question?
It does. One thing I think we may need to have is a comparison on the 2 ordinances, what is included in the original ordinance or the substitute ordinance that Alderman Beal has provided, as well as the ordinance that Alderman Riley has, so we understand the different points between the 2 and hopefully come out with the best ordinance that we can as a council. So that would be my only suggestion to Alderman Riley and the team putting together the briefings so we can have some clarity on that. So thank you.
Excellent suggestion, and we'll take it under advisement. Alderman Smith.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just be brief. I was actually just going to make the same suggestion that Alderman Irvin made. I think that is the orderly way to proceed. We've never really had a chance to just line by line through these ordinances with everyone, and so I agree with the suggestion to hold the ordinance right now and go into briefing so we can hammer it out. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Alderman Smith. Alderman Beal.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. First, I would like to ask the committee to accept my substitute into committee.
This is Tani. I'll make a motion to accept the substitute in the committee.
Moved by Alderman Tunney. Substitute is accepted.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chairman. Madam Chairman, as you all know, I have been working on this for probably 8 to 10 months. And I really appreciate the substitute being called into committee today, but I'm extremely disturbed that we're going to hold this without having discussion about what this ordinance does and what it is intended to do. I have wanted to have a hearing in order to discuss the ordinance and the things that are in it. I think my ordinance is a great piece of legislation that is trying to be derailed. And I think if all my colleagues really look at this ordinance, it's a great piece of legislation that brings total independence and transparency to the city council, where this council will finally be able to go and talk to lawyers and budget people in order to get honest and straight answers without having to go to someone for approval. This is basically copied out of what they do in Congress, where Congress has their own department where you can go and get that independent, expertise type of counsel from. And I just think that, time is really of the essence to move forward. And, I'm not interested in, people trying to derail it in order to, try to get credit themselves in order to, it's not about credit. This is about transparency and independence of this city council. And so I have consulted with a lot of people, and I sent the ordinance out, and it's not unusual for this body to accept ordinances or substitutes. We've gotten substitutes at the last minute that was brought to the floor, and we voted for and moved on. And I don't see why this couldn't be any different. And so I would really like for Madam Chair, for you to reconsider. And actually, let's have a full-blown hearing so we can ask questions and get answers to those questions about what this ordinance does and what it can do. And, I just think that it's very important that we continue to move forward at this particular time. And so that is my recommendation. And I think it's a great piece of legislation. And, I think we should move on it expeditiously. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Alderman Beal. Let me first say that I had intended to hear your ordinance today, which is why it was on the agenda. And I called you probably a few weeks back to let you know that this would be on the agenda. The fact that the ordinance has changed substantially and was received after working hours at 6:07 p.m., as I stated, and we had to get it out. I haven't had a chance to really review it. I think that it is in the best interest of the committee and the work that we have to do to just hold this and to review it and to do the kind of analysis that Alderman Irvin has suggested. So I thank you for your suggestion and motion, but my intention is to hold this. Alderman King?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to add, I think, Alderman Beal's ordinance has, or at least the idea of it has a lot of support, as well as Alderman Riley's. Is it possible for them to do a briefing together and to figure out where their ordinances differ and, where they agree, so that we can, come together and do what's best for us as a body?
Alderman Riley, Alderman Beal.
Chairman, Alderman Riley here. I'm certainly happy to work with Alderman Beal. We have briefings scheduled on the ordinance that I've submitted this Friday. Happy to prepare a side-by-side comparison of the two. It'll be straight up objective. It won't be editorial. And people can take a look, and maybe it turns into an exercise where during the briefing, as people are looking at the side-by-side, they like some pieces of Alderman Beal's proposal and other pieces of the one that we've put forth. And the ultimate product is a combination of the two. To earlier comments, this isn't about pride of authorship. I will hand my ordinance over to Alderman Beal today. I just want to make sure we get it right. And while I've only had a very brief amount of time to look at this substitute, which is dramatically different than Alderman Beal's original proposal, and I would argue it's a lot better. So kudos to Alderman Beal. There are still a number of deficiencies in it, and some of those you've already pointed out, Madam Chair. So the point here is not which ordinance wins, it's that we get a good ordinance on the books. And I think if we roll up our sleeves and people are willing to set aside personality differences, we can get something done here. But the purpose is not to kill one ordinance and pass another. It's that if we're going to do this, let's do it right so that we're providing future city councils with a really great toolbox. And I would say that there are pieces of Alderman Beal's ordinance proposal that we should consider, but to rush it through today, sight unseen, harkens back to previous administrations, to Alderman Beal's point, where it was, hey, take a quick look and let's just do this. So no one wants to drag this thing out unnecessarily. I sure don't. And I can appreciate Alderman Beal's frustration, having worked on this as long as he has. But I do think that the substitute he's introduced is a dramatic improvement over what he did. And unfortunately, those 6 or 7 months were lost on that draft. But I think it's come a long way here. And so that's my
No,
hope.
it was lost because you DNP'd it.
Okay.
All right, so
if I could finish, can I wrap up my remarks, Chairman?
Yes,
And then I'll yes. So anyway, my point is, I looked at the briefings as an opportunity for everybody to weigh in and say their piece. And certainly Alderman Beal has been invited to participate in a briefing as well. And I hope he takes advantage of that. But the purpose here is not to debate one ordinance and say it's terrible and the other one's great. It's which of these pieces work best together for us as a body. So that's my only purpose here. I really don't care whose name is on the ordinance at the end of the day. But we all have a strong interest in getting this right. So that's my only purpose here. And thank you for the time, Chairman.
Thank you, Alderman Riley. Alderman Lopez.
So, Chairman, that was,
sorry,
kind of my
Alderman
time,
King.
but
I'm sorry.
back to my
Alderman
point,
King.
I think we need to do, what's best in the best interest for the body. I do think elements of both are in there. I certainly understand Alderman Bill's frustration. But, can we do these together so we can figure out what's best for the body and then move forward?
I've
That would
heard
be my recommendation.
your recommendation, Alderman King, and also the recommendation of Alderman Irvin, which is in the same, has the same sensibilities of the two working together to come up with an ordinance that we can all support. That's not going to get done in this meeting, and I hope that the two will get together and move forward. Alderman Lopez.
Thank you, Chairman, and again, members of the committee. I just want to point out that it's somewhat hypocritical to say, for members to say that we haven't had a chance to read line by line a substitute, when then just yesterday, not prior administrations, just yesterday, a different committee accepted 26 minutes before committees was to start, a substitute to a substitute, which nobody had seen. And everyone was okay with it, many of whom are on this call today. So I think for us to all of a sudden have high moral standards for reviewing substitutes is clearly gamesmanship at its worst, because we only care about the line by lines when we don't want to talk about something. And when it doesn't concern us, we're happy to move forward with substitutes squared.
Thank you, Alderman Lopez. Although the ordinance yesterday had no budget implications, nor did it have implications for changing our rules as a city council. So we will move forward with this.
Actually, it was an intergovernmental agreement I'm referring to. So I think that's even worse, because it's two different governments that nobody knew exactly what was going on.
Well, it didn't impact the Rules Committee, which this new substitute ordinance does. Alderman Irvin, and then I'd like to have a motion to hold this item.
So moved. You know what? Move to hold the item in committee. We don't need to keep going in circles around this issue. We got two ordinances. Let's work to get this right for the sake of all of us and for the sake of the council and for the citizens of this city. So I will concur on Alderman Chairman Dow's motion for keeping this matter in committee.
Okay, hearing no objection, this item will be held by the affirmative vote of all members present at roll call to determine quorum. There being no further business.
Move to adjourn, Alderman Hairston.
There being no further business before the committee, I thank Alderman Hairston for her motion to adjourn the meeting by the affirmative vote of all members of the present for the roll call to determine quorum. Hearing no objection, so ordered. The Committee on Budget and Government Operations is adjourned. Thank you all. Have a great afternoon.